So our next speaker is not doing a presentation, but she's going to come out. We're going to talk for a little. Her name is Aine McGlynn. She's the managing director of Framework, a Toronto-based nonprofit organization founded in 2003. Framework's flagship program is Time Raiser, an event that rolls a silent auction and a volunteer fair into a fun night out on the town. In 17 communities across Canada, people come to Time Raisers to bid their volunteer time, not their money, on artwork that Framework purchases from local emerging artists. Previously, Aine was a lecturer at the University of Toronto, where she completed her PhD in 2010. She's the co-editor of Transnationalism Activism Art, published in 2012 by the University of Toronto Press, which explores the relationship between global communities, both economic and cultural, activist energies, and cultural products. Aine. Nice intro music.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
So tell us a little more about Time Raiser. That was sort of a one-sentence thing, and it's actually sort of a complex idea.
Yeah, it's, we're a nonprofit, but we're not as straightforward as a lot of other nonprofits. It's not like food banks or, clothes. What we do with the Time Raiser program is we invite people to come out to the event. It's really great fun, good music, nice cocktails, but then we're sort of slipping in some social good as well. So you have the opportunity at a Time Raiser to meet with up to 24 different nonprofits across a number of different kinds of causes. You chat to them about what kind of skills you have. You hear about what kind of opportunities they have. And once you've kind of made your matches, kind of like speed dating, you check off which ones you want to hear more from, then you start bidding on the artwork. The nice twist is that you bid in volunteer hours as opposed to money. The other win is that we make a commitment to pay all of the artists for their artwork. So the artwork that you see at Time Raiser is not donated. It's a really important pillar for us that if we're going to build community, that we have to support the cultural sector as well. So our sponsors help us to be able to support the artists. So if you have a winning pledge, you have a year to complete your hours, which is typically around 100 hours, 2 hours a week. And then you get your artwork at the end of the year. So you don't walk away on the night with your artwork. Like any auction, you have to pony up, the resources before you get your prize. So we've raised over 140,000 volunteer hours since we've been doing Time Raisers and invested close to $1 million into Canadian artists' careers. So it's a win-win-win.
Well,
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So as you heard in her bio, Aine is, as we say in Boston, wicked smart. And so, we're here to talk about culture and millennials and sort of digital culture. So I thought we could sort of talk about that a little.
Yeah, sure.
And, just what the idea of digital culture is, sort of how it ties into what you're doing,
yeah, sure.
and everything else. So I guess, like, from your perspective, from an academic perspective, what is digital culture?
Yeah, so really hard to define. As an academic, my first thought is always to start defining terms, right? I'm a historicist, so I don't tend to take things just kind of on face value. I think sometimes with digital culture, we think that it just kind of emerged out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, you had your first smartphone, and then all of a sudden you were digitally, culturally connected, and of course that's not the case at all. At its most basic, digital comes from the Latin word for digitus, which, we have 10 of those. Actually, no, 20 of those on our
Sure.
our toes are also our digits. The fact that we used to sort of count on our hands was in essence, it's our bodily, physical, digital culture. Another sort of very early example of the digital would be like a smoke signal. A smoke signal is actually a digital technology. Sure. Smoke in and of itself is analog. It moves in one direction. But once you add a blanket to it, you modify it, and that creates a modality, then that creates a signal. So digital refers to the way in which we take signs and symbols and combine them to create meaning out of them. So language is a digital technology. So the way in which we understand digital today is quite different from its sort of historical context.
Right.
Yeah.
With the computers and
with the
technology,
computers
right.
and the things and all of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to the smoke signals.
Yeah.
And then, sort of, as it becomes a sort of hybrid digital culture, like what is digital culture then?
I'm not going to get there yet. I'm still going to.
Okay.
I'm still defining terms, right?
Okay,
Because
let's
this
define
is what I do. Yeah. So let's define
Sorry.
culture. Now that we've talked about the digital, okay, let's try to define culture. And how many minutes do we have? Obviously, really amorphous, constantly shifting and changing. But I guess culture also has its roots in language. It's best thought of as the signs and the symbols and the agreed upon references that a group of people ascribe to and believe in. Back to sort of the idea of language as being a really important way to create culture. When people are teaching a language, right? So if you're learning Spanish or French or German, language teachers talk about culture as the fifth skill. So the first four being reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But culture is that fifth skill, and it's that thing that's, as a language teacher, very, very hard to teach. So it's often more learned, acquired, and absorbed than it is taught.
So like idioms and stuff like
That's
that.
right. That's or what symbols mean, right? Like in some cultures, white is a symbol you wear on your wedding day, and others it's a symbol of mourning. So all of those things have to be sort of learned, and in many cases, when you grow up in that space, they become absorbed. So that's why when we talk about digital natives, which we'll talk about a little bit later, it's this idea that they have, in the same way that someone understands Greek culture from being born in Greece, they come up within it, and so they absorb it. Yeah. So I think I think we'll kind of touch on that.
Great.
Yeah.
And so then, like, sort of, how have they come
how do
together,
the two
and
things
like,
come
what does it
together?
mean
Yeah.
when they come together?
So if digital is referring to sort of technologies that signs and symbols that we combine to create meaning, and culture refers to the agreed upon signs and symbols that unite a people or population. Digital culture comes together in myriad different ways, and I think some of the examples that I like to use when talking about sort of the first real interesting conversation between art and technology is John Cage's 1952 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Is anybody familiar with that? 4 minutes, 30
You guys know?
Couple people, yeah.
Why don't you explain it?
Well,
anyways?
I can perform it right now.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
okay.
I won't do all 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's a musical piece. You can play any instrument you'd like in it. It can be played on a number of different instruments. So we could play it together maybe for a couple seconds. You ready?
All right,
Okay,
ready?
3,
1,
2,
2.
1. That was a good excerpt.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a really good excerpt. It's entirely silent. It's a piece of music composed for any musician, where the musician comes out on stage, sits before the instrument, opens up the scorebook, and then does nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So what does this have to do with the digital? It might be your question. Well, and the way we understand digital culture.
Thank you for asking for me.
Sorry. Yeah, Morgan, you feel free to just leave if you want. Yeah. So what that has to do with the digital culture that we inhabit now is that in some ways, John Cage kind of invented the notion of interactivity. So this notion of depending on the audience to help create meaning.
Right, because the performance is really the sort of sounds and thoughts of the audience
That's
as
right.
they watch the musician.
That's right.
Not performing.
That's
or
right.
Performing silently, I suppose.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Like for him, he tried to sit in silence, and realized that his own body was making these sort of internal noises, so it was actually impossible. So even his own body was interacting with silence, and of course then the audience was having to ascribe meaning to it. Another sort of more later example would be Marina Abramovich's Rhythm Zero from 1974. You might, some of the millennials would know Marina Abramovich from Jay-Z's video, Picasso Baby. She's one of the people in the video, yeah. So he
Well, and it was sort of inspired by her most recent project at MoMA, right?
That's right, that's right. So in 1974, she stood in a room, this is pretty provocative, with a whole bunch of objects on a table, and invited the people to come into the room and to use the objects on her in whatever way they wanted. So there was everything from a feather to a loaded gun. And it got pretty heavy, as you can imagine. It got pretty heavy. But again, that this is a forerunner of the idea of inviting the audience to interact with the person who's providing them the tools by which to do so. Like it's not a big stretch between from Abramovich in 1974 to the woman who sells her virginity online to pay for her college education. It's just that it's a commoditization of that same kind of relationship and process. So digital and culture came together, I think, a long time before we understood the way in which it exists right now. Yeah.
And okay, so let's talk about how it exists right now that we actually have the things we normally would consider digital, like our phones and our computers and everything.
Yeah, I think it's still really emerging as much as we all, this conference is a perfect example of digital culture. I think it's too easy to talk, or it's too early even to talk about it as kind of a tautology. Like I think that there's still, there's cultures that are coming online right now. Like for instance, we talk about Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. I mean, they constitute close to 60% of the global population, but yet they're only 22% of internet users. So there's a lot of people who still need to come online, and I think that the way in which they contribute their cultural references and their cultural specificity to the way in which we use digital technology today is going to continue to shape how that culture takes place. I think it kind of remains to be seen. We understand a particular version of sort of still largely Western culture as mediated through digital technology. So I think it's really exciting to see how that's going to be transformed. Yeah.
Let's talk about the term digital native, which people say, and I often find very annoying, but I guess it's an actual thing, I suppose. So like, what does that? What does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I think I'm closer to 40 than I am to 30. So in some, I don't think I'm part of that digital native generation. But I have nephews who are 10 and 12, and they for sure like form that generation, that generation that doesn't remember a time before YouTube. They don't remember a time before they could sort of go online and access whatever information that they needed. But yet, like I still am sort of hesitant to go all the way and say like, okay, just because you were born in the internet era, that you know how to use technology from birth. It's rather that you understand the fluency in the language around technology. That when you see little kids now going to sort of make, they're playing charades and they're like, okay, I'm going to take a picture of you. They don't do this anymore, which is what we did. They did this. So it's just a different sort of set of signs and symbols that are constituting their particular cultural references, right?
That's fun. Like, there's been a lot of talk about sort of how Apple designs their operating system in these like ways that sort of harken back to a non-digital time that are increasingly totally meaningless. Yeah. For a long time, the thing that played a podcast was like a reel-to-reel tape player, and like no one actually knows what that is, right? But it's these older people who think that a podcast involves a reel-to-reel tape player. Right.
Yeah. Similarly, the save button, right, on Microsoft Word, which obviously saving is becoming increasingly obsolescent, right? As we just sort of use collaborative docs that are online anyway. But that save button is a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Like, when's the last time you held one of those in your hands? I think I have like my master's thesis on one, and I'm like, I can't access this. This is gone. I might as well just use this as a coaster. So I think the other thing about digital natives is that like I don't think that we're doing a good job of communicating to that generation that there is a difference between sort of the digital world and that the digital world is intentional, and that technology is intentional, and that it has, like I said, it has historical roots. So we just sort of give them access to digital technologies without sort of telling them what it is they're doing and how it works, and that's not magic. And I think that, maybe that old computer class that I went to in grade, 6, and I think it might be a good idea to sort of bring that back online, so to speak,
Right.
in the real world.
So what do these digital natives sort of actually expect from culture and sort of the workforce and like how are having them sort of interact with society on a whole changing things?
Well, I think they expect sort of cause and effect to happen at the same time. It's almost as though the digital native sitting in front of John Cage, or listening to 4 minutes and 33 seconds, they're writing the score as quickly as the silence is being produced, and hearing it back, and then sort of commenting on it and remixing it, and then adding beats and making ragtime versions of it, like all at the same time, right? So it's the idea of this of sort of real-time predictive relationship to culture. So I don't think culture is really exciting right now, because typically signs and symbols and cultural references form over time and they endure. That's been one of the defining features of culture. But now, of course, culture is being made and unmade and reshaped. And a meme that was the most important thing, a week and a half ago, nobody remembers anymore. So it's like cultural memory is shortening, which is, I think, a little scary in some ways. But at the same time, I think the playfulness that you unlock with respect to culture making because of digital technology actually opens up a whole lot of possibility. So on the one hand, I think we have to work on sort of broadening our big C cultural memory, while also sort of not losing the sort of little c cultural playfulness.
Can we talk about
Big C and little c?
Yeah. What does that mean?
So big C culture refers to the sort of like the pests, the political, economic, social and technological unifiers, things that are more sort of constant, right? Like, our political culture, well, I was going to say our political culture, but I'm from Canada, right. So it's a little bit different. But you know what?
You have a crack smoking mayor now too. So
that's right. So same, yeah.
We are all unified.
That's true. Yeah. If this was DC and Toronto, there'd be a lot of harmony. Yeah, so it's, same but different. Obviously, the big C economic culture, we can all sort of talk about and share, but that little c culture is particular to smaller groups, right? So we talk about like workplace culture, and I know there was some conversation about that this morning for the online audience, and some of the research obviously that's being released over these next couple of days has a lot to do with workplace culture. But I think and digital culture, as it refers to that workplace culture, is really quite interesting. Because you're seeing, of course, these different expectations and different ways of working, and digital technologies are allowing that transformation and those expectations to happen. But if an organization is not ready to meet those expectations, it can be a really big challenge.
Like what are some of those expectations?
Remote working, flex time, being able to access key company files from anywhere on any mobile device. And I know that's it's obviously really important to this whole generation of workers that's coming up. But from my perspective, from the nonprofit sector, it's a massive challenge. There's a massive skills and competencies gap in the sector. So an organization, being ready to allow their employees to work that way, they might want to, but they don't necessarily know how to.
How have you guys sort of dealt with that?
So we've just, our founder was always like a real futurist and really just interested in technology. So, we had Salesforce in 2004. We were just like pretty sort of forward thinking as far as ways of working. As a small team working in 17 communities across Canada, like we have to be. So we've actually sort of built out a second stream of programming, TimeRaiser Plus, that helps nonprofits think through their digital capacity training. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about that tomorrow, so I'll save a little bit of that.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in, now that we're talking about TimeRaiser again, one question from the social Q&A just to get the people involved.
Yeah.
How do you guys get the money to purchase the artwork?
So that comes from our sponsors.
Okay.
We're sort of 60% corporate funded, 40% private foundation.
Got it.
We sort of toyed around with the idea of doing sort of crowdfunding and, you know, sort of person-to-person funding to support the artwork. But we feel that we really want the Time Raiser audience to not be sort of worried about contributing their money, but really focused on contributing their most valuable resource, their time. Yeah.
And how do you pick the artists?
So we have an open call. In fact, calls are open in Edmonton, Ottawa, and Halifax right now. That's a plug for the Canadian audience. There you go. So there's an open call. Artists can apply, and then we have a jury drawn from each of those local communities. You know, gallerists, art professionals who make those selections.
Awesome.
And the first Time Raiser in the United States is set to take place in Seattle this spring.
Okay.
So pretty excited about that. So it's a big
So
step for us.
next, in 2015.
2015.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We are out of time.
All right.
Thank you so much, Anya.
Thanks, Marty.
And everybody.